and clinical ear care specialist. I'm also the founder and director of a company called Clearwax, and Clearwax are actually the manufacturers and developers of the wireless eye clearscope endoscope, which is the device that we're using to perform and record this procedure. I had a client who attended with bilateral, very hard, dark, impacted earwax. You can see just how hard it is, and it's obviously been in there for a long time because of the colour. The wax is oxidised. You've got some hair matted to it as well. The patient has been in agony over Christmas and been using drops, but hasn't made any difference, as you can see. Tried to use endoscopic ear suction, but the Zollner suction probe just wouldn't get a grip. That wax was too impacted, and fortunately there was a gap at the roof of the ear canal, and I managed to insert an ear hook into that opening at the top, and after I inserted it horizontally, I turned it clockwise, so the sharp L pointed bit digs into the wax, and I slowly brought this wax forward. You can see there's a big chunk of wax there. However, there's a bit more. Whenever you're using instruments such as an ear hook or Jobson's horn, you have to be careful not to come in contact with the bony part of the ear canal. So the inner 2/3 of the ear canal is made up of bone, and you've got a very thin layer of skin that lines it, and the thickness of that layer of skin is approximately 0.1 millimeter, so it's very thin. The outer third of the ear canal is made up of cartilage, and under, just above the cartilage you've got some muscle and some fatty tissue, and you've got a thicker layer of skin which is around 1 millimeter in thickness. So it's a lot more, it's less sensitive, the cartilage portion of the ear canal, than the bony part, and it's a lot more flexible. So you can see we've got another huge piece of wax out there. You can see the patient's eardrums, very healthy, intact. You've got a light reflex, so whenever we shine a torch at the eardrum, if the eardrum is healthy, we get a reflection back from the torch that hits the eardrum and it reflects back, and we call that a light reflex. Doesn't mean to say that it's just a general rule of thumb, but sometimes you can have a patient with a light reflex but they still have got a middle ear abnormality. So the middle ear is a cavity behind the eardrum, and that can sometimes get full of catarrh and fluid, what we call glue ear. So we're on to the patient's left ear. You can see the patient had been using a cotton bud, so it's really impacted it. You can see the mark, it's indented within the middle of the wax. And this wax is really dark, it's almost black in colour. Similarly to the right ear, I've tried to use an ear hook. However, once you get into the wax, the core of the wax is a bit soft and gooey, almost like fudge, whereas the outer part's got a crust. So I managed to get the ear hook into the wax, but when I locked the ear hook into the wax by rotating it clockwise at 90 degrees, it just dissected through this soft core. So I've tried to use a Jobson's horn instead, but the wax is still very difficult, and I'm not able to get behind the wax here. What I'm trying to do, I've levered the Jobson's horn into the wax, and it's causing this ball of wax to rotate like a sphere. So it wasn't coming forwards. However, by using the Jobson's horn, I've created a gap again at the roof of the ear canal, which wasn't there before, like there was in the opposite ear, in the contralateral ear. So you can see with the ear hook, I've just lifted the cartilage up so I can wriggle the ear hook in and behind the wax. Because it was a cartilage portion, we're able to do that. If that was the bony part of the ear canal and I made that contact with using the ear hook, it would have been very uncomfortable for the patient. So just slowly manipulating this out of the ear, and you can see it's rotating at the same time. It's like a basketball on your finger when you spin it. Here we are, so it's just got lodged at the entrance. With an ear hook, you have to be very careful. Once you've got the hook inside the wax and you're pulling out, extracting it out, sometimes, because you're putting so much force, the ear hook separates from the wax, and the tip of the ear hook, you're in danger of cutting and slicing the fleshy part of the ear canal, so you have to be very careful. So when you extract it, it has to be very controlled and measured, just in case the ear hook does dissect through the wax. You always have to have control over it. Just gone back in with the Jobson's horn just to mop up some soft matted wax on the anterior canal wall. So the anterior means the front part of the ear canal. And we're quite lateral, we're near the entrance, and we know that because if you've been watching my videos, you should be aware that the cilia, the hairs in the ear, should only be growing on the outer third of the ear canal, and that's because the hair follicles are only located on the cartilage portion of the ear canal and not on the bony part of the ear canal. So whenever you see a procedure and you can see a few hairs, then it should be an indication that the specialist is operating near the entrance of the ear. And as I said, with the cartilage portion where we are now, it's semi-sensitive, so we can put a bit of pressure on there, and it's very flexible, it's malleable, so we can twist and rotate the cartilage portion of the ear canal, but the bony part you can't. It's stiff, it's non-flexible, and it's very sensitive. And there's the patient's eardrum. Got 3 still images. So this is the wax we removed from both ears. In a moment you'll see a close-up of these wax lumps together. That's the close-up. And finally I weighed the wax, and you'll see the wax on my jewellery precision scales, which is measuring 582 milligrams, so just over half a gram. I'm still waiting for my first patient whereby the wax is weighed in above 1 gram. I'm sure I'll get there sooner rather than later. I hope you enjoyed that video, guys. A bit of a short one. I've got some really good videos coming up. I had some really interesting cases over the last few days, and I'll try my best to get these uploaded